Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on another Marketing Chit Chat with Laura Greeno and Brandon Utley. Today we're going to talk about how to be more creative, which I'm super excited to share some things with you and to also hear what Brandon has to say, because I know he's really creative too. But I need to share. So this will be Brandon's last weekly chit chat with us. So he'll be back here and there for some honorable guest speaker events. But today is his last chit chat. He's got all kinds of things going on and has to kind of focus. So Brandon, is there anything you want to tell anybody about what you're doing next?
Well, like
I didn't give him any. Yeah, I didn't give him any. I didn't tell him I was going to ask.
No worries. No, it's crazy time of year, and I'm just paused. It's been a great experience doing these with you, so I look forward to doing them in the future as well.
Cool. Okay, so back to creativity. So I had a quote I wanted to share with you from, let me find that. A couple. The first one is Maya Angelou. Is it Angelou or Angelo?
I say Angelou.
Angelou. It looks like Angelou. So, of course, you can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have, which just points to that, like practice. It actually does take practice. The more you do it, the better you get at it. I know there's all these people who think, right, so creativity is only for those people. Right? Those creative people, those people who I don't really have it. I'm very analytical. I like the numbers, but that's not true. Creativity, we are born to be creative. You just have to find in what expression that is for what your specific talents are. So that's one quote. And then another one I like from Albert Einstein. And I know he gets like misquoted a lot. I hope this is the correct one. I think it is. But he says, I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious. And I think that goes for anybody too. It's for everyone. If you're just super curious and you ask questions that make you wonder or make other people wonder, or I think that is what helps lead you into a more creative life even. So I've been lucky enough to kind of be a creative person among creative people. It's one of the probably there's 1, 2, or 3 things that people constantly say if they have to describe me. That's one of the things. So I feel like it's one of the best compliments I could ever get. So when they say, oh, you have great ideas, or I love her ideas, or she's very creative, that makes me feel fantastic. Even though I'm not a painter or, it's just kind of ideation. So that's one of the things that I really value in this life as well. So I'll let Brandon go first, but then I want to make sure that I share my 5-step process for how to be more creative. But I'll let Brandon share about what he believes, how you can be more creative.
Yeah, well, I think you've kind of danced around it a little bit, but one of the things I feel is that you said it really well, is that everybody is creative at some level. The problem is most of us have a lot of negative self-talk, and we tell things like, I'm not creative, I'm not good at math, or whatever it is, right? That's wrong. You can be better at anything, but it takes intention and it takes work, right? And a lot of people see these people and put them up on a pedestal and they think, gosh, it comes so easy for that person, right? The author, the painter, or whatever. And what you learn is that all those people, they work at it and it's a job. It's like if you read one of the best books, it's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And in that book, he talks about how so many people, wait for inspiration to strike. And that's another myth, is like creativity just strikes people at random, when they least expect it. That absolutely happens, right? And you want to be grooming that in your life. Like we all joke about like good ideas come in the shower, like, or whatever. When you're least expecting it, a lot of times things happen. Or in the middle of the night, you'll have a dream, or you'll wake up with like a thought. Especially in our business, you might have a sentence or a phrase come to you, or an idea for a client, and you're like, I better get up and write this down right now before I forget, because you will, right? But one of the great quotes that Stephen Pressfield had in that book, The War of Art, was from Somerset Maugham, who was an author. And he said, I write only when inspiration strikes. Fortunately, it strikes every morning at 9 o'clock sharp. So it's like if you read, he was an older author, but if you look at people like Stephen King and others, they get up, they have a routine, they stick to their schedule. It's a grind, right? And that's part of being creative, is you can't just, sit there and go, I'll do it when it feels convenient. You have to be intentional, and you have to think about it, and you have to build that into your life. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah, agreed. 100%. I mean, because you practice, because you do it every day, you actually get better at it, and you're ready. I think that readiness for when it comes, right? When inspiration hits, which can be out of the blue, can be from another source. It doesn't have to come from your mind, right? It come from, the energy around you or whatever. I could get a little funny in that area, but prayer, right? Meditation, other states of consciousness, right? So that's one way that those inspirational thoughts and ideas come to you, but you have to be ready. You have to hear them and listen and know that that's what it is, or I guess it's or accept that that's what it is. Because there's so many people who are like, that's a crazy idea, or that's just ridiculous. But what if you let it sit there? What if you calmed it down a little for the real life? What if you turned that crazy idea into a great idea, right? So that's one of the things that's one of the parts of the process that I want people to kind of learn. So I think, again, anybody can be creative. There's a grind to it. There's also a process that you can put in place. And one of the things that I do, I'll share with you my 5-step process. So first of all, you have to ask questions and be super curious. So whatever you are thinking about, or whatever you want to be more innovative or more creative around, or come up with new ideas for anything, ask questions to yourself, right? It could be like you could write them down in a journal. You could think about them right before you go to bed. You could actually hit those other states of consciousness through either meditation or prayer, or right, there's also magic mushrooms, which I don't do, but I know that there's a piece of the pie that you can hit another state of consciousness with that. I'm actually researching it for a book, but I have not done it yet. I'm curious, and I might take one of those trips, right, someday, but I haven't done it yet. I want it to be super careful. And
I may or may not have tried that in the past, and I would say I didn't write anything down, and I probably should have at the time if I were doing it, because it would be incredible to look back on those insights. But so you don't necessarily have to have drug-induced experiences to be creative, for sure. Like Stephen King is not. By the way, Stephen King, for example, he was an alcoholic who, I don't know if you heard this story, but one of his first biggest bestseller was Carrie.
Yeah.
And he was like this big drinker. He and his wife were hadn't been married very long. He was literally writing in a laundry room at whatever tiny little place they had, like in the off hours, because he was teaching school, and he was just miserable, etc. And he had written a big chunk of Carrie and thrown it in the trash can because he just was disgusted. He didn't think it was going anywhere. His wife fished it out of the trash can, read it, and said, "Stephen, you really need to continue this. This is pretty good," right? And then when he submitted it to publishers, he gets a call one day from, somebody saying, "We're going to take this book and we want movie rights and all this." And it immediately changed his life, right? But that's because he was working on the craft constantly. And then, but my point was, he thought that he needed the alcohol to fuel the creativity and stuff. that was killing him. And he stopped drinking. And guess what? It didn't really impede him. Look at what happened. He became a better person, better writer, and he didn't need that as a crutch.
Yeah, doesn't
Yeah.
make a difference.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you can kind of hit that right state of consciousness for another state of consciousness is actually in right before you go to sleep, like that sleep wake state, and right before you wake up. And then sometimes people process and synthesize ideas in their sleep too,
Yeah.
right? At middle of the night. Sometimes you wake up. That's one of my favorite times to actually work and think of new ideas is upon waking.
Yeah.
So those are some of the ways to get into that interesting place to however you want to find it, right? If you want to define it as a divine inspiration or just an inspiration out of the blue, some people might say that, but really it takes that working, that thinking, that ruminating. So anyway, back to five tips.
I want to jump in on that real quick because I do that actually. And it sounds a little woo-woo, but there's a ton of research around this. And to follow up on what you said, for example, if you're working on a problem and you're trying to be creative and solve something, a lot of times what's useful is before you go to bed, and you may have to do this for a series of nights, right? You intentionally think about that right before you're about to go to sleep. Like, I want to, solve this issue, or I'm looking for ideas around this challenge I have or whatever. And then just drop it and go on, right? Go to sleep, see what happens, etc. But like the worst is when somebody comes to you almost with a gun into your head and says, Laura, I need you to come up with a creative idea right now by 12 noon about XYZ. Like usually people under a gun are not going to be able to just do that on the spot. But what happens is if you can hopefully give yourself a little space and let that ruminate, your mind will work for you in the background. It's this whole subconscious. And again, there's a ton of research on that. And lots of smarter people than me have said this. It works, right? So that's a great tip. Definitely just, think about things at a certain level and then just let the universe process it, help you do it. And then you'll be surprised. You might just be driving down the road and see something and it goes, oh my God, it sparks the idea immediately or whatever.
Yeah, your mind will be ready for the answer. Even if you don't have it, your mind will be prepared. It'll have the foundation ready to hear the answer when it does come. And then your mind might actually come up with the answer too, but there'll be extra. There'll be extra if you just listen carefully. So ask questions, do your research. You do have to do your research, right? So think about all the things right around the subject, all the other ideas that have come up, that people have already come up with around the subject. And sometimes it's not even around the subject. Sometimes it's completely some other industry or some other idea or some other wave of thought that helps you to come up with this new idea for what you're working on.
Yeah, a great example. Can I just throw this in? Obviously, the pandemic, right? It's been going on for a while, but when the shots came out, a lot of places were overwhelmed and they had lines of cars and they couldn't figure out how to get people in and out efficiently, et cetera. I read a story where one hospital in Chapel Hill, among others, probably was thinking about this going, how the hell do we process cars? Who's really good at doing this? Oh, you know what? Chick-fil-A, when you go there, they have it down pat. Like they move people in and out. So they actually went to Chick-fil-A and said, can you help us structure this and talk about creative? And, within a matter of days, they had the lines resolved. Boom. And so you drive up, somebody helps you with the clipboard, process you in, you move up, you get your shot. It's like getting your fries and your drink and you're gone. Right. So it's amazing because like somebody was paying attention and that's the other thing. In addition to being curious, you got to be observant, right? Just paying attention to what's going on around you. And sometimes you will find those insights from other examples, other industries, like you said. So great stuff.
Yes. Chick-fil-A has been the number one drive-through since I was working, since they were a client of mine in like 1999.
Oh, wow.
So, and the equipment and the process is what makes that work for them.
Yeah.
Training too. But anyway, so So ask questions, research, compile ideas, ruminate, right? Number 2. Number 3 is the be quiet part. The be quiet and listen part that we talked about, that Brandon said. Think about this problem. Give your brain a problem to work on while you sleep, right? Just keep it in there. But you got to listen carefully to the answer. And you have to accept the answers that you get, even though you might think they're not ready, like they're too big or they're too broad or they're too crazy. But keep it in there, right? It might not be the exact answer, but it's going to lead you to the exact answer you want. So number 4 is write or draw, right? So whatever answers, thoughts, huge ideas, ridiculous, crazy ideas that you got, write them down or draw something that represents what you heard, what you listened to, what you received, what you got from the world or divinity or your prayer, your meditation, what your mind did. Okay, so then you're connecting, right? You start to connect those thoughts and those inspired ideas. And number 5 is locating the gaps. Like, so you look at what you have, everything you have, all the connections, all of the ideas, all of the crazy thoughts, right? And you locate the gaps in that for what is still missing. And then you go back to number 1 and ask questions about those gaps. And you go through the process again. Number 1 is ask questions. Number 2 is ruminate, right? Number 3 is be quiet, listen. Number 4 is write or draw down what you've heard. Number 5 is locating the gaps again. And don't forget to thank your mind, thank your body, thank the universe, as Brandon said, thank God, thank wherever those ideas came from. But you do have to sit and listen.
Celebrate the small wins too. You might not always hit a home run with every idea, but when you do get those gems, say thanks for hey, because again, a lot of stuff in my experience has come, it really feels like out of the blue, right? Yeah. Things just hit you and you're like, and then when you tell them to somebody else, they're like, that's an insanely great idea. I'm like, yeah, I kind of didn't even think of that myself. I can't even take credit for that. It came from somewhere else. And that's exactly what Stephen King says about the writing process. He sits down, most of the time, he doesn't even know where the books are going. And it's like a runaway train, he says, when he sits there and goes through his daily grind, the thing just takes on a life of its own. So that's kind of how ideas work. But they don't do that unless you sit down and work it. So
yeah. I like I think this also comes from Thomas Edison, where he used to, in his time, they used to sit for ideas. Like they would pay him or, the idea people at the time to sit for ideas, like an hour or 2 hours or however. This ideas take time and patience and curiosity and rumination and research. They take time. It takes time. It's not, like you said, a gun to your head and give me an idea in 30 minutes right now, starting now. Right? So have fun with it. There's this fun aspect to coming up with ideas and thinking. I mean, I hate this phrase because it's so overused, but thinking outside of the box, right? There's something very fun and liberating and sort of freeing. There's a freedom aspect to creativity that we all have inside of us, and that you just have to find what your expression of that is.
Yeah, that's great.
So, I will see you all next week, this same time, Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern. And thank you so much, Brandon, for being a part of this. And
thank you for having me.
We'll be back, but we don't know when yet. All right. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.